Oh, hello, and welcome to Al Dente Rigamortis. I'm Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, the E stands for evil.
And I'm the gamer in yellow.
And we're here to discuss those internet stories, most creepy and most pasta, and be critically silly doing it. And tonight we have The Candles of Shelburne. So it's getting really like we're like a day or two away from Canada Day up here. So I thought I'd hunt down another Canadian creepypasta to just let you know for the time, like for the mood. Also, I just realized I'm gonna bring it up here. I just realized last week's episode was technically our eighth year birthday. But you know what? When we get to the 10th year birthday, I'll do something really special.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Like I'm gonna save some my hype and energy for that. Like when we get to that point.
It's an oopsie, but it's fine.
Yeah, you know, we should like we'd have that 8th year birthday, and then Canada Day was coming up. So like, you know what? Let's go with Canada Day. So for like a theme anyway. But yeah, so we're doing The Candles of Shelburne. It's by Indole on creepypasta.wiki. You can check it out there. But otherwise, I'll go into the rundown. So Nair and his friends, because again, we don't get Nair's name, I believe, in this story.
That's true.
But we get all of his friends' names: Greg, Kyle, and Sally.
Aliases, I believe.
Yeah. Well, yeah. He says he'll call them these names. Which
may
no
actually
one likes
be
name calling.
them real names.
Yeah, probably. Hey, it's an improvement from last week when everyone was called like A and S and K.
Fuck, don't remind me. Purge that.
That's the real reason why we didn't bother celebrating our 8th year birthday. The gamer just really hated the last story.
I mean, anyways, please continue.
Yeah, let's continue. Yeah, so Nair, Greg, Kyle, and Sally are all teens who live in Shelburne, Ontario. And this story takes place in 1992. On a very warm October evening, the teens decide to sneak out of their very rigid Christian conservative homes and camp out in the nearby valleys and hills. They get out a ways out into a valley and set up a camp on a hill overlooking the valley. And as they do typical teen things like drink, smoke pot, and make out, Nair heads out down the hill a bit to take a leak. It's here that he sees a moving candlelight off in the valley, and it stops as though the person holding the candle has spotted Nair, even though it's like the darkness of night. Nair goes back up to his friends and reports what he saw, and then they head over to the spot to take a look, and that's when they find that it's now 2 candles that are moving through the valley towards them, much closer. They call out, stifling any nervous fears on the strange situation, and that's when more candles pop up throughout the valley, like dozens of them, heading towards the teens. They then promptly nope the fuck out of that situation, back up to their campsite and pack up and run. Nair is one of the last ones to leave the camp and looks back to hear the closest 2 people, supposedly holding the candles that they saw that were closest, running and stomping up the hill towards them. Like they are like really close. So he freaks out and the gang runs all the way home. Rationalizing that this may have been a prank by their parents to teach them to break curfew, like, because again, like they weren't supposed to be out here at night.
Break curfew.
Yes, to teach them to not break curfew. But those rationalizations get dashed when they return home and find that everything is the same, and their parents are fast asleep as like they were when they left them. So unless they're ninjas or like ninjas, and just like that's a whole other story entirely. The Shelburne ninjas.
The ninjas of Shelburne.
Yeah, the ninjas of Shelburne. Yeah. And then so that kind of is the end of it for most of them. And then Nair never tells his friends that 3 months later he returned to the camp spot they had been at on a cold winter day and found, to his horror, stacks and stacks of burnt out candles and even recently burned firewood, as though someone had been waiting for them to return. Finn. So, I think we shall move on to everyone tolerates the crime inquisitions at this point. It's a bad thing for a story that is this story was pretty short. And it's bad when most of my notes are just almost not quite, but almost sentence by sentence by sentence.
Oh, really?
For issues or grammar inquisition stuff. So yeah, let's just dive into this. This day, someday in late October in 92, it was just as any normal day would start out. So I think so. The first bit there is this day, comma, someday in late October 92, comma, da, 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 da. I think that first comma should actually be an ellipses, since it looks like it's denoting a pause as the person recollects, this day, someday in late 92, in October, late October, someday in late October in 92. Just, I feel like there should have been a bit more of a pause than a comma.
I'm not against that.
And then my next one here. But there it was, palpable heat and all. So conjunction junction fodder aside, I'll save that for Mikey. I think there should actually be a comma after there it was. So it's but there it was, comma, palpable heat and all. Because as it is, it's just but there it was, palpable heat and all. There's just no, there should be a pause there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my next one here. It was a day of boring and probably very offensive, narrow Catholic lectures. We were sick of this long day, and we just wanted the outdoors, which was basically video games for us, which most of us didn't have at the time. So we're well on our merry way, go hiking down onto Highway 10, and group of 4, me and 2 other guys plus a girl. Okay, 2 things. For me, there's a little bit of past tense, present tense thing that I kind of didn't like about this. So it's I think it should be, it had been a day of boring. Just to make it past tense. Otherwise, maybe throw that cut to bit at the top. So at the start of the story, it says cut to Shelburne, Ontario. Almost cut to a location, cut to a location from a previous scene, even though the story's starting like that. And I think that the cut to should actually be here. So it's just cut to our merry way. Just so because we're starting with this whole thing, he's talking about how boring his day was, and then it's cut to this next scene where we're already hiking down the Highway 10 and stuff like that. And if you don't want to use the cut to, or want to do something differently, then perhaps it should read so that second part of the paragraph, or that second paragraph that's from the boring school day and such. Perhaps it should say, we were on our merry way, going hiking down along Highway 10, a group of 4, 2 other guys plus a girl and me. And after a group of 4, have a semicolon, just to kind of here's a list of who was in the group.
And it's hard to follow what you're talking about. Because
I'm
you're
sorry.
talking about the part where it's talking about the school day being boring, and then you're talking about cut to here, and then you're talking about the start of the next paragraph.
Yeah, I had a whole there's a whole list of things. I was basically cramming it all into one note. So
the way that
oh,
go ahead.
I was going to ask what his new version sounds like.
Did you make a new version?
Yeah, I did.
Alright.
Okay, yeah. So like, so I guess my full version of this would have been it had been a day of boring, and then in brackets, and probably honestly get rid of these bracketed things like and probably a very offensive / narrow Catholic lecture. So it's just like it had been a boring Catholic lecture. We were, or sorry, yeah. It had been sorry, it had been a day of boring Catholic lectures. We were sick of this long day, and we just wanted the outdoors, which was basically like video games for us. And then cut to the next part, which would be cut to our merry way, going hiking down along Highway 10, a group of 4, semicolon, two other guys plus a girl and me.
Can I say my correction?
Yeah, go for it. It's probably better than mine, than my hack job.
The next line after that is school ended at 4 p.m. In my opinion, that sentence should be flipped with the Merry Way one.
Absolutely.
So it would
what
be...
the fuck?
Yeah, and get rid of the Merry Way thing because it sounds kind of weird. The way that I rewrote that the start of that paragraph is school ended at 4 p.m. for us. Oh, sorry. School ended at 4 p.m. for us, and we met up a few hours after that, so it was already dusk going on dark, period. The 4 of us, me, 2 other guys, and a girl, were well on our merry way, comma, as we hiked down onto Highway 10.
Future me, if you want to just delete all of my stuff and just have gamers be the correction.
Have to.
Probably a little bit cleaner than mine.
Nope. It's staying all in there.
Fuck you, past cultist.
Because, I also had the same problem with that paragraph because, it starts weird. It doesn't describe what they're doing until the second paragraph. And then then you actually get an understanding of what's going on.
Yeah.
Or at least also, the timing of it.
Yeah. Also, I definitely I didn't put it in my notes initially, but my third opinion on this little bit here is that these bracketed spots, these bracketed descriptors, are kind of distracting because it happens twice in the same paragraph, or not even the same paragraph, the same sentence. That first section was all one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. But I shall move on to the next thing I have. We thought nothing of it as we hike all the time in the woods. I just, never mind. I don't have a problem with this.
Was it a tense thing?
Yeah, but I realized now, reading it a third time, I now know why they say hike. Okay, and, well, actually, there's something here that I can bitch at. We thought nothing of it as we hike all the time in these woods. Although, to be fair, we had never much ventured outside of our little town, let alone check out trails stemming from the major highway. But being 14 and sheltered, we were desperate to be daring. All one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Only broke up by commas. Yeah, it's a little much similar to the previous issue I had, where that one, it was a day of boring. That whole sentence was all three lines of just nonstop sentence. Same to this one. It's just nonstop sentences. So, but onto my next one here. It got very steep and thickened with vine, and getting dark, this was terribly difficult. So I feel like there should be a comma moved to after dark there. So it's it got very steep and thickened with vine, and getting dark, comma, this was terribly difficult. Or, and getting dark, this was terribly difficult. Just add a comma at the after dark, so that just sort of emphasizes because it's getting dark and with all these vines and such, this was terribly difficult.
Can I reword it a little bit?
Please save me from myself. Apparently I'm having an off day on reading.
I don't have this note, but I'm just trying to think of how to do it.
Okay.
It got very steep and thickened with vine. And with it getting dark, this was terribly difficult.
Yes, that would also improve it. Sorry, I'm on my off day today. I don't have a cup of coffee. That's why.
Why don't you go get one?
No. I'm just gonna push through it.
Okay, it's a bit now.
Next thing here, the magical kind that made you feel self-conscious and weird at the time, but now make you all warm and fuzzily nostalgic. Well, anyway, we were just sitting there and I suddenly needed to pee. So, oh my god. You're not going to believe this. I fucking just copied and pasted the same thing instead of my notes. I feel like this entire story would work better for me if they used quotations at the start of each paragraph and an end quote at the very end of the story, as though the entire story is being recalled by somebody to someone. Like, and I'm like, I've seen this done in novels. Yeah, I've seen it done in stories and stuff before, like by Frank Belknap Long, who is a Cthulhu. Yeah, Frank Belknap Long.
Okay. You said so.
Sorry,
quick
I did say it a little fast.
Yeah, I was like, Gesundheit?
He's a mythos writer, or he was a mythos writer back in like the 30s, who would write stories like within the mythos, like the Hounds of Tyndalos, and his writing style was always like basically one long dialogue being spoken to somebody, and like for me that way, I feel like you could get away with some of the dialogue expressions and like accents that this character sort of inflects in this, like, well, anyway, or like that kind of stuff, because this whole story does kind of read like somebody is telling this at a campfire story, or like at a campfire. Oddly enough, like, and it actually even fits because like this is the kind of story that would be told at a campsite, like in the dark.
Or it's very what's the word? I can't think of words now. Like it's very like personal, not professional, because it's like a 14-year-old kid's writing this down.
Yeah, it's very informal.
Informal. That's the word I couldn't find. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So like, just like, and that's like, otherwise, like the story is just riddled with like informalities and just like really kind of rough. But like, I think if you added like the quotations and stuff, you kind of can bypass that, because again, it's sort of our whole like long running shtick of like, it's the way the character talks.
Yeah, if you do that though, then everything, our entire grammar stuff is null and void because it's all quotes.
But that's fine. But like the fact that the story doesn't do that means we can bitch.
Yes, I personally think the way it's done is more immersive to it, because it's just a kid writing all this down. He's not necessarily an English major.
Except, okay, it says I'm 14 at the time of this story. They are recollecting what happened back when they were 14. They're not.
Yeah, they're probably 15
so this,
now.
Okay, I maybe they're 20. Who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, for me personally, I would have like preferred it if they'd like added the quote, like maybe like done the quotes like at the start of each paragraph, just to kind of denote that like this is somebody telling this story to someone, like us as a reader, or like, again, another character that's not mentioned. But I know that style isn't for everybody, but it would have helped for me. But I'll move on to the next thing I have. But it was pitch dark, and I was perhaps a quarter mile away. You're supposed to be in Canada here. Use kilometers.
I mean,
I get it. Like,
it
is a turn of phrase. Like, I mean, I do get it. Like, but at the same time, like, the story is in Canada. Like, we use kilometers, sir. But yeah, this was me being critically silly in grammar acquisition. It's just like, because again, we all use like a quarter mile or something like that, like in something. I looked it up. It's like, well, a quarter mile is basically like just under half a kilometer. So it's like you could have gone with that.
Yeah, but we don't have half-kilometer drag races.
That's true. Damn the states influencing our culture.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. It's ineffable, like some sort of foreshadowing on God's part, trying to pull you from harm's boundary. What? So I had to do some like digging to figure out some words, and I learned some words, and I also have a complaint about the sentence. So ineffable, adjective, too great or extreme to be expressed or described in words. Okay, so like I guess it's hard. Like he's using "it's ineffable" like as like a way of like describing the sensation. Like it's hard to describe the sensation he was having. And also harm's boundary. Like I've only ever heard it like try to pull someone from harm's way, not harm's boundary.
Well, it's like there's a radius effect of harm in the area.
So shouldn't it be
Harm's
should
reach.
pull it away? Yeah. Harm's reach, even that would work. Harm's boundary just seems really. I guess like with harm's reach that makes sense because it's like reach and boundary do have similar like meanings.
Yeah.
It's just I've never heard like to pull somebody from harm's boundary.
It's
It
probably
just
meant
seems
to
like
be harm's reach. It's just they forgot the word. Just like I forgot informal for like a very long time earlier.
true. That's
People
fair.
forget things.
And then my next one here, we all packed silently, scared. Sorry, we all packed silently, scared. Were our parents playing a prank on us for being out so late? So everyone had packed up. They mostly come at night, mostly. This felt a little repetitive to me. Now, the next sentence after the last, so everyone packed up, is sort of like kind of like a segue to them like leaving the campgrounds. But it just seemed really like it seemed kind of screwy to me.
Would it be better if it was like with everyone ready to go?
Yeah, I think that's the double use of packed so so close to each other, like kind of fucked with me a little bit.
You don't like double packing?
No.
Okay, that's fair.
And yeah, it's just unnecessary. But my last one actually for grammar acquisition. Pure adrenaline took us safely out of the pure adrenaline took us safely out of that forest. We were more relieved than ever to be out of. Okay, in this case, I think I don't think actually a comma is needed. As it's pausing the wording unnecessarily. So it's like pure. So the comma in the sentence is pure adrenaline took us safely out of that forest, comma. We were more relieved than ever to be out of. So I feel like it should be like no comma, and so it just reads pure adrenaline took us out of that forest. We were more relieved than ever to be out of.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, always.
Pure adrenaline that took us safely out of that forest that we were more than relieved than ever to be out of.
Yep, that would definitely fix it as well, or would heighten the sentence. All right, I'm done with my grammar acquisition. Mikey, you got it. Throw the mic at you.
And a mic distortion sound.
All right. You did a good job, but I got one.
Okay.
So
Do it. Kill me. I'm here.
the quote is, "I was fixed for maybe 5 minutes when it stopped." I just changed it to "I was fixated."
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was fixed. Just right out there in the woods. Just wow. That's quite the rough operation.
Or maybe it means that he's like a robot, and this is in the 2080s.
The 2080s or no 2090s.
Well, it said 80s or 90s.
It says 80s or 90s, but then it goes on and says it's the summer, or it's not the summer. I always want to say it's the summer of 92. It's late October in 92.
That's true.
So
yes.
Yeah.
So he was repaired for maybe 5 minutes when it stopped.
Yeah. Because he had a leak. Hence, that's why he had to take a leak.
Well, this is
He didn't have to take a leak. He had a leak.
Yeah, exactly. This is when he was like after he finished mending his leak, there was the flame moving, and he couldn't move because his like servos locked up. So he went into like a repair program to like self-diagnose and fix himself. And then when he was fixed, like for maybe 5 minutes, he was fixed for 5 minutes when it stopped. So he fixed himself, and then 5 minutes later, after watching it, it stopped.
Yeah.
And then now that he's fixed, he can go back and tell his friends who are also maybe robots.
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense.
It sounds plausible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we really need to run Shadowrun. I'm sorry, Mikey, or Eclipse Phase, because this would definitely like
Mikey to play Shadowrun with us. Then we can stop apologizing because he'll understand.
Yeah. Would that make you feel better, Mikey?
Maybe.
Okay.
Definitely maybe.
Tell my wife hello. Anyway, what do you got next?
All right. I have a conjunction junction.
What a shock. Honestly, like as I was reading, it's like, oh, this is definitely going to be a conjunction junction to this one. And next stop, conjunction junction. Doot, doot.
It's as rural as it gets. And when I grew up there, 80s and 90s, it was essentially a Canadian Texas. It was pretty sunny and hot out, which was unusual because A, it's late October, and B, we're 2.5 hours north of Toronto, so we're pretty far up. But there it was, palpable heat and all. So we're well on our merry way, go hiking down onto Highway 10, and group of 4, me and 2 other guys plus a girl. It was a day of boring and probably very offensive, narrow Catholic lectures. We were sick of this long day, and we just wanted the outdoors, which was basically like video games for us, which most of us didn't have at the time. It got very steep and thickened with vine, and getting dark, this was terribly difficult. It wasn't like the flat rows of cornfields you see in Sudbury. It was the classic awkward teenage phase experience. It was unmistakably a flame, not like a huge fire, but a small contained one, like a candle, but large enough to be seen far away. So maybe like some lamp. It just stopped. Not the flame, it was still there. But it had stopped moving forward, or up, or down. But it was pitch dark, and I was perhaps a quarter-mile away. So I zip up and climb up the hill, leaving the lone candle-holding stranger be. So we climbed down the side of the hill. I went and gazed across the valley. And they're closer. It's ineffable, like some sort of foreshadowing on God's part, trying to pull you from harm's boundary. But at the time, being a teen, and with a group mentality, no one wanted to be afraid. Or maybe it's cool. They're just lost. They need shelter. But now that we're dead silent and still in all regards. But now they were dead silent and still in all regards. And they're all zeroing in on us. It felt like forever to pack up our things, and none of us bothered to look down the ravine during that time. So everyone had packed up. But the worst part was when they were close enough. And it was at this point that I realized that they weren't walking. It was anything but natural sounding. It didn't sound like what an out-of-breath human should sound like. It was a mix of a pant and sob, but strained almost too high-pitched to be a man. So I went, months later, on one of the calmer days during the harsh winter. It must have been January 1993, many months after the first incident, and on this particular day, it was freezing. But when I got there, I decided I wouldn't tell anyone. And, God forbid, not even the priest in my church's confession booth will ever hear this, but I swear to God, when I got there were hundreds of candles stacked, dug into the ground, melted, burnt out. And there was burnt firewood. It waited through winter. Finn.
First off, thank you, Mikey, for giving us a second rundown. Like, thank God this story was only like 4 pages long. Also, the only time, like, so it wasn't really a silly thing that you did, but like by you just doing like the conjunctions sentences, it actually made them like the two closest candle holders like approaching them quickly a little bit spookier, because like it wasn't them. He couldn't hear them running, or he couldn't hear them walking, and it was going to imply that they were running. But then you like go on like they were making an unnatural sound. It's like, oh God, what are they? How are they moving?
The way that I heard him, it was describing his friends packing up and them leaving, and then it immediately went into how the sounds of running and making those weird noises. So it made it sound like his friends were the ones making those weird noises.
Oh Jesus!
Like, because
okay,
they're running away, they're showing their true colors, kind of deal.
Yeah, this is actually a Fleshgate story. Like, his friends are actually not human. Like they were not because they all, cause remember, like early on in the story they all had to meet up at a location and like from their separate houses. So it's just like he's the only one who actually like was human and actually arrived like at the scene. All of his other friends were replaced by these like Fleshgates. And basically like just kind of like making him assume that they were his friends.
Yeah. And also early on when he was talking about how they're going for like a hike and all of that, and then immediately after that it starts talking about the boring and somewhat offensive lectures that were happening.
Yeah. Like
during their hike. Like one of them was lecturing them on Catholic stuff.
One of them's a real Bible thumper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God, that guy. We don't talk about Kyle.
Kyle. Yeah, and for those unaware, Mikey does these strings of sentences to highlight all the sentences in a story that start with words that they probably shouldn't, like its, ands, or buts, because there's pretty much always better words to use.
Yes. All right. Well, on to Gamer then.
That'd be me. Where's my notes? They're there.
Where am I?
So you kind of talked about this. Very start of the story. Cut to Shelburne, Ontario.
Yeah,
I read that. I'm like, are we doing in media res here? Because it feels like there should be something ahead of that. I
was conflicted on putting this either in Grammar Inquisition or actual thoughts, because that's actually my first actual thought is the cut to Shelburne's thing.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, sorry, continue. Like, I don't mean to cut you off there.
Yeah, like to cut to something, you have to cut away from something, and the only thing we're cutting away from is the title right now.
Yeah. Now, I could see that maybe like they're trying to like evoke a jarring sense to the reader to kind of like get them in the mood for this story of like a spooky story. But maybe I'm giving the author a little too much credit with that. Who can say?
I guess, but if you want to do that sort of thing, there should be something ahead of it being like some sort of intro saying like, since the events of this, I've been terrified to go out into the woods ever again, and that here I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Then cut to Shelburne. Yeah.
Cut to. Yeah. Like the cut to even like rubbed me the wrong way because like I didn't mind it, but at the same time I was a little. It felt hollow or incomplete to me. So it's like, I was like kind of on that fence of like I don't like. I kind of like I'm kind of okay with this, but at the same time, not really. Like that centrist mode on the story.
I'm pretty sure I've heard you say cut to repeatedly during our tabletop games.
Yeah, but that's when we're like from one scene or another.
Yes.
Like cut to what's Gamer and what's his face doing from like a scene that where like we had separate players.
Yes.
So it's like
you don't hate cutting to, you just hate starting with cutting to.
Yeah, like it's just where are we cutting to? Where are we cutting from?
Yes.
Like yeah.
Yeah, I can move on from there. So next one, I don't know if we talked about it or not. It's just a long run on. If we talked about it, then cut it out. We drink whatever booze we could get. On one occasion, scored some shitty weed, which is a huge deal for us. Ellipses, period. And wait, is that a period? No, that's a comma.
Period. Okay.
Comma. Basically, as free spirited as rural, comma, religious upbringing will allow, comma, as far as we could distance ourselves from our sheltered little boxes, comma, and escape into our little world. Is all one sentence.
God.
I would just break that into 2 sentences at the ellipses. So some shitty weed, which is a huge deal for us, period. Our group was basically as free-spirited as a rural religious upbringing will allow, distancing ourselves from our sheltered little boxes, blah, 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 blah. So I cut out a few words and added in a couple that kind of made it run a little better, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This day, someday in late October 92, it was just as any normal day would start out. It was pretty sunny and hot out, which was unusual because blah, 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 blah. So when I read that, I'm like, so is it weird or not? It can't be a normal day and unusual at the same time.
I mean, it can get unusual, but it can start off boring and normal, but it can get weird.
I don't know, man.
No,
there's no
100%. That's how escalation works, Gamer. Like it started off as a normal day, but then got really weird by the end of the day. All right.
I'm disagreeing with you just because it's not saying it started out normal and ended up being weird. It's saying it was just like any normal day would start out. And then it doesn't say later on in the day it got really hot, though. It says, this is a normal day, how it starts out. It was weirdly hot.
Okay. No, I get where it's saying. Okay, so slightly... So it's a normal day in terms of their activities. The unusual thing, though, was that it was unusually hot for October. Like that's the weird thing, is that it's really hot for... Otherwise, it's a normal day. It's just the temperature is weird. That's I think what they're trying to get across.
It doesn't say that their activities were normal. It's just saying the day was normal, which could mean anything.
But normally it means like the activities of the day. But okay.
I don't know. Basically, there needs to be more words in there to describe what the hell is going on.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
Because like it could be this day, someday in late October 92, it was unusually hot out and pretty sunny, which was weird. But the plans that we had for the day were pretty normal. We were gonna finish school and then go out for a hike. Like that sounds normal, but it's just kind of weird how it's immediately after saying normal, it said unusual right away. It was weird.
Okay.
And the other couple things were talked about, so I'm good.
Okay. Then I suppose we'll move on to actual thoughts. So I'm going to forego the cut to Shelburne part of my actual thoughts because I kind of threw them into your grammar inquisition. So I'm going to start with this one. after Catholic school, us kids would often go together and to roam in packs throughout the woods. We were wolves, by the way. And I was like, man, I kind of want, like, this is like me, like, just taking this note down as I'm like as I'm reading this part of the story. It's like, I kind of want this story to turn out to be a werewolf story or something. It doesn't, but it was like, it's such a, like, I get what they're saying. It's like we'd roam like in packs of kids through the woods. It's like, I get it. I can kind of understand, like, that's a description of like what they do and stuff like that. They just roam around because they have nothing else to do. But it's like, we were wolves, by the way. We were actually werewolves.
Based on Mikey's conjunction junction, that's what I extrapolated the information out to being.
Oh yeah, they're wolves. They were werewolves as they ran away from the candles
because they were making weird noises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were sounding like coyotes or dogs,
Yep.
right? I think that's what it said earlier. Yeah. All right, now I got to get to you know, really grinds my gears as a Canadian. Geography. So this is the comment here in the story. Or this is the quote in the story. It was pretty sunny and hot out, which was unusual because A, it's late October, and B, we're 2.5 hours north of Toronto, so we're pretty far up. Southerners. He says, as a person who's an hour or so north of Shelburne in reality.
Yeah, not really that northern at all.
No. So I know for a fact, without Googling it, I only used Google Map to confirm, but I know that Shelburne is not 2.5 hours from Toronto.
No.
It is barely. It is. You can maybe get there in an hour and 45 minutes, like under 2 hours, like well under 2 hours.
What you don't know is his parents only drive like a scooter.
Yeah, that's true. Or like. They could be. It is. I think that area, like around that area, is Amish country or like Mennonite country. So it could be. Yeah, they could be horse and buggy.
By normal means of a car,
yeah.
No,
yeah. Like maybe if you hit some really nasty traffic or construction zones on the 427, or when you're going through Brampton on your way out of Toronto,
they specifically take the scenic route and avoid all the fast
there's like 2 or 3 ways to get to Shelburne from Toronto, and like the 427, I think the 410, those are highways, and then unless you're like just like scenic routing through like suburbs and development, and this is in the 90s, so like that a lot of that suburbs and development weren't even like we're still like it was still just country roads and farmland, especially out near that on that corner. Also, they're not technically north of Toronto; they're like northwest of Toronto.
If we want to get you say north.
Yeah, but north. But like when I think of north, I think straight north, not like northwest. Like they are literally like it's not like they're not like more north than west. They are like almost perfectly northwest of Toronto.
You wouldn't say that the Northwest Territories are north of us at all?
No, they're northwest of us.
They're very north.
They're north of British Columbia and like Alberta, but they're not north of Ontario. They're northwest of Ontario.
Yes, they are. But it is also north. It's like the equator is south of us. Like,
well, that's true. That's omnipresently south.
California is
around the globe. Southwest.
We'll fight like this all day.
I'm going to fight you with this
That's
bit.
Fine.
Like this, I'm being critically silly, sir.
That's fine.
Welcome to Half Our Show. Also, I was like, I was like trying to like figure out like how far do you need to be in order to get like 2.5 miles or 2.5 hours from Shelburne? So I quickly Google mapped it. London, Ontario is probably your best bet for a 2.5 hour trip to Shelburne. So, but I'll move on to my next gripe because there's a couple. So my next thing here, I didn't have the right battery for our flashlights, and my parents won't let us even be out here, let alone be out here with their flares. And I was like, you didn't have the right batteries for? Wait, Flares? Okay, I'm kind of on your parents on. I'm kind of with your parents on this one. You do not want to bring flares out into the woods.
Yeah, I don't know where the flares came from.
Or you don't want. I think maybe it's supposed to be like, maybe it's like a slang or a term for flashlight, but like I've never heard like, or maybe they're looking for another word for flashlight. But it just no flares are for emergencies. They're not for like long-term use like a flashlight.
But teens be teens.
Yeah, teens do be teens. And then the next thing here, after the steepness leveled out, the vine thickness only slightly so, it started on a long incline, which brought us to this hill that overlooked cliff faces and huge mountains and valleys. In and around Shelburne?
Shut up.
Like, I know there's like an escarpment there, like along like from Collingwood and like Georgian Bay, like down like through like near Shelburne, and I know that like the terrain is like rolling hills and occasionally like ravines and stuff. But huge mountains is not what how I would describe that.
Okay, that's the thing where kids make mountains out of molehills.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah, they are. Yeah, he is. Technically, at the time of the story, he is a teen, so like a rolling hills are mountains for
also,
them. I can
hate to say it.
Yeah,
it's a creepypasta. Through their trek through the woods, they could have went through some portal and ended up anywhere.
And you know what? If that should have been in the story, like they should have brought up the fact that this was weird. Why are there huge mountains in Shelburne?
Mm-hmm.
They went to bad Narnia.
If this took place in Saskatchewan,
they went to Barnea.
If this took place in Saskatchewan, and then all of a sudden there were huge mountains, that would be a very big qualifier. It's like, okay, we're not in Saskatchewan anymore.
No, we're clearly at the foothills of the Rockies at this point. How the hell did we get here? Yeah. Yeah, no, like I was like, I have a geography is a big thing for me apparently when it comes to story. It really grinds my gears. And speaking of that, it wasn't like the flat rows of cornfields you see in Sudbury. Is this person? And at this point, I was like, is this person even from Ontario? Like, is this author even from Ontario? Like the cornfields of Sudbury? What the fuck? Like, I've been to Sudbury. I've been to Shelburne. I've been to Sudbury. They're not really known for their for their farms. Their rolling rows of corn farms.
They don't have them.
It's. I did actually have to Google. I did Google it. There's like 2 or 3 farms there, but. Like, when I think of Sudbury, I think of, like, exposed bedrock and Canadian Shield. I think of rocky woods and rivers. And like, small lakes. I am not thinking of farms at all when I think of Sudbury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the nickel mine.
Yeah, and the nickel mine. Yeah, like, I'm thinking of, like, mining operations and stuff like that more than farming. But yeah, I was just like, what the hell's going on in the story? Like, is this person like just like chose a random a random place to like set their creepypasta? But I digress.
Different in the 80s and 90s than what you're thinking.
I don't think it was. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think it was that different. I don't think like there were. I've been to Sudbury in the 90s, and like it was even less developed and it was more wooded and like the mining operation left like a lot more like barren, rocky land. So, but again, maybe I'm like off on this. Like maybe I'm if this person, and again, I apologize if like I'm not. I don't mean to be like me. Like is this person even from Canada? Like I'm sure they are. If they are, like I'm sure they are. It's just. It seems really weird the way they're describing things, like that are in Canada and Ontario specifically, as an Ontarian.
Got to their comment saying, "I grew up in Shelburne on a farm. So did all of my friends. We all did corn."
Okay. Well, yeah, in it's if they said they were from Sudbury on a corn farm, it's like, okay, then I apologize, but then like that's just a side of Sudbury I've never known. When I've been there, so I'll move on. We were still. They were still. I don't like this, Sally said more covertly. We decided to walk up the hill. I wish we didn't. We get back to the top, just like 10-second walk up. And there are 2, then 3, then 4 other flames lighting up in other parts of the valley. Parts not far from us at all. And they're all zeroing in on us. Okay, I've been making fun of this story a lot, but this was actually a genuinely creepy scenario for me. I could relate to this. Like, this would be genuinely creepy because I've thought of this kind of like horror scenario multiple times. Me and Gamer went on a drive to pick up my most recent car, and we had a little bit of a mini adventure in this neck of the woods in Ontario. Like where we had to drive down like through the escarpment and like into some valleys, and then like get back up into the to like the nearest highway. And that, like, even though we're in the safety of a car that was moving, that was brand new and was moving really fast and able to like have really good controls and stuff like that, I was still trying to beat the darkening valleys as the sun was getting low.
He was chasing us
because I kept him. Yeah, yeah, like because I can, and like I don't know if I brought it up. Well, I brought up a lot of like, man, this is really creepy, and like we're getting like to some hillbilly town or like hillbilly horror stuff going on here. But like honestly, in my head, that's like this kind of scenario was like not too far off from what I was thinking, are like of having to deal with like strange lights or people's just stalking us in those valleys. Like. Yeah, it's just like there's just like sort of like I think maybe because of like the way like the sun was going down and just like darkening because of the escarpment, like behind us, it just like kind of felt like the shadows were deepening upon us. Yeah, it was cool. It was creepy, but it was really cool. So reading this part of the story, like where like suddenly like they go back up to their campsite and then they look back and there's like more candle lights popping up all throughout the valley and they're zeroing in on these campers. I like genuinely like I love that scenario. Like it's creepy to me and it worked. And then the next thing, kind of like borrowing off of that and going a little bit deeper, we have this large quote that I have. It's basically a paragraph or two, but I apologize, but I'm going to read it anyway. Remember how before I said one of the candle holders was a few hundred yards away? Well, now there were 2 that were very close, like approaching that spot where I was going to pee. And it was at this point that I realized that they weren't walking. They were running up that ravine. And I could hear how loud they were stomping, how the twigs were breaking underneath their feet, and most unsettling, how they were wheezing and panting. It was anything but natural sounding. It didn't sound like what an out-of-breath human should sound like. It was a mix of pant and sob, but strained, almost too high-pitched to be a man, kind of like a yelp of a dog or coyote. But it was too hoarse for that. Sorry, it was too hoarse for that. And it sounded like the basis of actual words, not random cries. Okay, so a few things I want to bring up at this point with this quote here. The writing aside of this story, I like that the group just nopes the fuck out of the situation when things get like alarming. Like it felt to me very realistic in that manner. Like I think I've had not this situation, but like I've had a situation, or I feel like I've had situations like this before, where like I see something weird, I go and call up my buddies who are up at the campsite. We go and check it out, and then like either nothing comes of it, or like we think of the worst case scenario. Or we're talking about the worst case scenario, like if we get to that spot and like something gets really spooky or weird, we're just like, yeah, no, we'd fucking nope out of that. Like that's the point where we're just like, fuck this, we're out. Like. Or like it's that kind of thing where when you bring up in movies where it's like, why are these people like going down into the valley to investigate? Why don't they like nope out as soon as they see more candles popping up in the valley? And like this story actually kind of does that, like where like they do the more logical thing, or they do the more I guess realistic thing, at least to my perspective of it. Like so I kind of really dug it for that reason, like of that, like their reactions were actually like reasonable to me when when shit got spookier and weirder with the candles in the valley. The only thing that I think kind of detracts from that is that I think the smarter thing would have been just bail on all of your things in the camp and just run. Like, you could have noped a little bit harder by just abandoning all of your stuff.
Yeah, but they were surprisingly smart considering how drunk and high they were at the time.
That's true too. Yeah.
So the fact that they noped
they're teens, so.
was good.
Yeah. And then my secondary thing for this, like that quote and stuff of that is, well, guys, we got a Cthulhu would make this better segment.
Of course.
Looks like them Duke boys of Shelburne just came across a cult of Cthulhu, the fire vampire god. Each candle is just an aspect or mote of flame from the entity itself. And these cultists were performing some kind of ritual in the valley when the teens stumbled onto the area and were made aware by the cultists. So like as the cultists were giving chase, and we were hearing that it wasn't panting they were doing. It was almost like it was like some kind of like words or something they were saying, like in and sobbing and stuff like that. That's just the cultists were still performing their ritual as like chanting under their breath as they gave chase.
Yeah, pretty much.
Or it is because it says later like they were rationalizing that maybe our parents went out there and did this as a prank or something, or the parents are did all this and they're secretly Cthulhu cultists who are going to sacrifice their children to the dark gods.
Or all of that, except they're not trying to sacrifice them. They're all just going home from their cult meeting.
They actually never actually saw or they never actually saw the kids.
They're just walking, and then all of a sudden they check their time. It's like, oh shit, we got to get back, and then they started running.
Yeah. No, I like that too. That can work too. Like these kids just stumbled upon their parents' dirty little secret of being secretly Cthulhu cultists. Under the just like that's why they have such a strict and rigid curfew to going out at night, because they're the ones that are also going out at night, or because like the parents are already at home asleep. The lights, they are all Cthulhu cultists, but the way the cultists like perform their rituals and stuff in the nearby valley, which clearly has some kind of like shrine or maybe even an avatar of Cthulhu buried underneath the valley or something. Maybe it's like the valley is actually a caldera, like a small caldera of a volcano. Even though I don't think tectonically that makes sense in Ontario. Anyway, the reason why the parents were found back at home sound asleep is because they astrally projected their spirits into the valley as a form of worship to the Cthulhu god. Because like a lot of times in like spirituality, like the soul is seen as a spark or a flame. So like it would make sense that a cult to a fire god might use something like they worship their god through their astral form or through their spirit form. I
don't think spirit forms could make heavy footfalls while running.
I mean, they could have. Sorry, Mike, we're going to go into some Shadowrun stuff. Spirit forms can manifest physically into the real world and like interact with the real world. Yeah. So like these could all be apparitions, and like, but because they have like they've manifested, they are like moving around and like running rather than like floating around and such. Yeah. So when or like even they did hear their kids out in the woods, and so they were like rushing, like basically not chasing them, but like rushing to go get their spirit forms back to their bodies, because they'd been the ritual had been interrupted. So that's why like suddenly all the sparks like lit up in the valley, and then they just like, oh shit, break it up, somebody's nearby. But yeah,
surprisingly plausible.
That has been that has been this week's Cthulhu Would Make It Better, and cultists wanting to make a Cthulhu scenario out of a creepypasta. And now for my last actual thought. I'm gonna start with it's this last line of the story, honestly. Whatever was out there for us that night, it was waiting for us to come back. It waited through winter. Okay, you know what? To me, that was a really cool line. Like, I just really enjoy the way it sounds and the ominous tone it kind of implies by the end. Like, it's like, especially after reading like the what he found at the campsite, or like in the previous sentences, where it's like there's just these burned out candles just stacked up like over, like hundreds of candles just stacked out in the brush, and then there's even like recent wood that had been burned. Like, this thing just, or this person just waited out there for them.
Sins. There was many of them.
Well, yeah, well, it might be a thing, like, because maybe it was like I was almost thinking like like it was like a Willow and the Wisp kind of thing, where like they were some kind of entity, or maybe it is like just like cultists or ghosts that are or werewolves who werewolves with candles on their heads.
All of the above.
It's like
cultist,
over
werewolf, ghosts.
Yeah. Or like, Gamer, do you remember World of Warcraft?
No, tell me
at all?
about it. Yes, I remember.
Okay. Well, this is okay. You remember?
I remember.
Do you remember how what the kobolds look like in that? Like the kind of rat people with candles on their heads?
Yes.
I kind of reminded of that. Like, maybe they were even like, these aren't even werewolves. Like, maybe we're actually like, maybe the cult of Cthulhu is actually a ghoul cult. So they're that's why they're like, they have like the dog like kind of meeping and like high pitched sounds and stuff like that. But they are big and imposing. But they also have a bit of humanity still to them. So that's why they have the candles, or like they have like either they're either holding the candles, or that they have them on their heads as part of their rites with Cthulhu. Again, I'm kind of slipping into my Cthulhu would make this better.
I thought you were done with that.
But no, a tentacle just slipped back into my brain.
These things happen.
Yeah, it's a common occurrence. But yeah, just the imagery I got like from this last bit here of like these burned out candles, and like this, the fact that something like it looked like something stayed on the site where they were, implies something sinister was going to happen if they had stayed, or if they'd been caught. And then what's more, like it sort of like definitely touches on my the right kind of connections in my brain for like that, like out of context kind of horror. Like, what the fuck is happening here? I love this. Like, that kind of like notion hits like it's hitting that right, like the sweet spot in my brain for like the weird element. So and I was actually at first going to make like point out and complain about like how, because it says like early on, like it was like the dead of winter, like basically it was like January of '93 he came back to this place. And I was like, would there really be like would you really be able to see all these stacks of candles? It would like snow and stuff like that, because I mean it's not too far from us and we get a lot of snow. But then I started thinking, it's like, I mean, I've driven down to Toronto from my location in the middle of like at Christmas time to see family, and like we get about halfway down and it's green. So I can kind of like see that like they probably don't have as much snow that I have at my like where I live. And if it's on the top of a hill, the snow's going to melt even faster on that location. So like it's not down, like if it's in a ravine, or if you're dealing with like hills and valleys, the top hills are going to be more sparse of snow than down in the valley itself. So I was going to complain, and then I didn't, and then I'm bringing it up again to say that I was going to complain and didn't.
Great.
So with that little bit of circle jerking all around, I'm going to hand it over to Mikey.
No, just because you started talking about kobolds, I googled them, and the first autocomplete that came up was Kobold Fight Club, which is apparent. Yeah, Kobold Fight Club, which is a staple utility for 5e for years and years, allowing GMs to use an easy utility to balance encounters and create new ones.
Interesting.
And its short form is KFC, and someone has made a KFC logo with a kobold face on it.
Oh my god!
Please continue, Mikey.
Oh, and yeah. Please continue, Mikey. We're getting caught in the weeds.
Just wanted to share that.
All right. So, continuing with the cultist geography, this story ticked me off from the get-go with it was essentially a Canadian Texas. To which I say false. Canadian Texas is Alberta.
Yeah. I think the implication is that like it's a very like Christian conservative kind of like rural part of Ontario.
Mhm.
Like it would have been better if it said Ontario, Texas. It was essentially an Ontarian Texas.
Well, yeah. Well, the thing is, it's also Texas is a state, so Texas isn't a small town. So
True.
at his age, he should be able to know the difference between state, province, and small town.
I think he just means like the vibe of it.
Yes, and I think Mikey is being critically silly.
No, that's awesome.
At least I pray that is the case, because otherwise I'm going to cry. But please go on.
So, my next actual thought is a little bit of a rabbit hole. So, the first quote here is, "I'm 14 at the time of the story." So, with my math, that puts him at either grade 8 or grade 9. So, at the end of elementary school or the beginning of high school.
Yeah.
We'd drink whatever booze we could get. On one occasion, scored some shitty weed, which was a huge deal for us, you know. So when I read that, I was leaning more towards high school.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, drugs became more of a thing in high school.
For sure.
You didn't go to my public school.
Well, and also like these are like repressed basically kids like having to deal with like a rural religious upbringing and such like that. This was like those kids tend to rebel a lot more in my observations.
And then
or they drink the Kool-Aid, which either or.
And then the next quote here is, "All the kids in the town knew each other at the time." So that brought me back to elementary school, because if he was in the first grade of high school, you meet a lot more people and you don't know everyone.
Okay.
So,
but it's still a small town.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might just be the smallness of it. It's just like
true.
There's not that many kids, so it doesn't matter too much the years, because you know everyone anyways, at least somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably a bar in Shelburne that's just like, where everybody knows your name.
All right.
Sorry.
And then the next quote here is late October in 92. So the fact that it's October means he should theoretically be starting his first year of grade 9.
Yeah.
And unless he was held back a year in elementary school. Because if that happened, then he's in elementary school.
Okay.
I love how we I went really into the geography. You're going into really the timeline stuff. So we're space and time.
Oh my God.
we're nitpicking space and time.
And then the real cincher that got me thinking definitely an elementary school student is school ended at 4 p.m. for us. Because high school usually ends earlier in the day.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
So elementary school.
And then later, so basically, I've established that he's in elementary school, and he was held back a year to explain his age.
Mhm.
Then the next quote is, "We thought nothing of it as we hike all the time in the woods, although, to be fair, we had never much ventured outside our little town, let alone check out trails stemming from the major highway. But being 14 and sheltered, we were desperate to be daring." So that tells me that they're all 14 years old, which means they're all held back a year in elementary
Because they're
school.
constantly doing
I mean-
drugs and alcohol together.
Yeah, no, honestly, like, yeah, like there's your excuse, like, for the story, is that, like, they're all held back because these are all the kids that are, like, the troublemakers in the school, like, that don't do the good, like, don't do great grades, and they're, like, their parents and stuff are strict and stuff like that for sure, but they're still breaking curfew and stuff like that, and smoking drugs and doing and I was about to say smoking drugs and doing cocaine. No,
That's next year.
It was the 90s. Yeah, it was. I was gonna say it was the 90s. But no, like smoking and drinking and stuff like that when they shouldn't be, that thing. But yeah, like these are definitely the rebellious troublemaker kids that are getting detention constantly and such.
All right.
Yeah.
And then my next actual thought here. It was pretty sunny and hot out, which was unusual because A, it's late October, and B, we're 2.5 hours north of Toronto, so we're pretty far up.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at weather records.
I was waiting for it. I was legitimately waiting for it when you brought up the previous thing where it was like someday in late October 1992. It was a noble day to start off. It was pretty. Yeah, I was waiting for, like, I was like, is Mikey gonna bring up the weather in 92 in Shelburne? But yeah, sorry. Continue. Go on. I want to hear it. I am legitimately interested.
Yes. So based on weather records, I narrowed it down to October 23rd, 1992.
Oh my God.
Because the high for that day was 19 degrees.
That is unusually high for late October.
Mm-hmm.
And for our American listeners,
It's
that was
Celsius.
Celsius.
So
So hang
look up
on.
a conversion.
I'm actually looking up right now for them. So 19 degrees Celsius is 66.2 Fahrenheit for our American friends.
Don't get Fahrenheit.
I honestly don't either. It is alien to me.
But that's amazing.
That is hilarious. I was like really I was kind of hoping that you were going to bring up the weather.
Yes. All right. So my next quote here is, after the steepness leveled out, the vine thickness only slightly so. How does vine thickness level out?
I mean, it doesn't grow as much. Like, I think that's what it was trying to say. Like the density of the vine growth was like
Wording would be thinning out, I think.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. All right. My next quote here. My buddy, let's call him Greg, took out the beers. I took out the joint of utterly piss-poor weed. And then later, I was really high and drunk at the time, so for some reason I kept on looking at it. To which my thought is, you just said it was really, really poor quality weed, and you had one joint.
Yeah.
Lightweight.
Yeah, it could be. Again, they are 14. They are like queens, kind of like they're 14-year-olds, having their first bud, or getting their first high on. But like, yeah, it's just, yeah.
It didn't sound like it was the first one,
Also-
though, because it said that not often, but they occasionally get some weed. So it's not like before that. So it's not like this is the first time.
True, but they can still be lightweight as a result of that. Like even if they've had it before. Also, I really didn't. Now that you bring it up, I kind of didn't like that part, like that excuse in the story, because it's like, swear to God, if this becomes all mundane and they just were high on, they were just high and drunk and like seeing things in the woods, I'm going to be very angry.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, like, thankfully, the end of the story kind of defeats that. Like, it's sort of like, I thought it was a dream, but then there was like a beating heart, or like, there was something that I thought was in the dream that confirms that all the things that happened were not a dream that I experienced. Like, I was worried for a second because it's like whenever they bring up, I was drunk and high at the time. It's like, don't you fucking dare, don't make this the mundane.
All right. Well, before I make it mundane, I have one more.
Son of a bitch. There's a time and place for that.
It's okay for me to do it.
But yes, continue.
I was fixed for maybe 5 minutes when it stopped.
Yeah, because he's
Another quote. And then the next quote. So I zip up and climb up the hill, leaving the lone candle-holding stranger be. So that's at least 5 minutes of him having his junk dangling out while looking at the candlelight.
That's true.
Yep. Yep.
Just like, whoa. Wow.
Oh, so this could be like a stranger danger, sort of like real world creepy, like creepy in a mundane way that's still really fucking creepy. Is like, why the fuck is there this guy with a candle, or girl? Why is this woman or guy out in the woods with a candle, looking at like peeping on teens camping out and taking a whiz?
I'm sure they were many, many meters away at that point, though.
That's true, yeah.
All right, and now for the mundane. The candle cult meets on Fridays. The first one to the meetup spot wins the prize.
Okay, yeah.
Because that explains why they're running and wheezing and whatnot, because they're trying to get to the meetup spot.
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
I'm down.
Mm-hmm. Or, so, you know what's funny? To elaborate on your mundanity here. So while these troublemaking teens are out, doing their doing this thing, because this is like supposedly a like rigged like Christian town that's kind of being like presented to us. There's actually another group of kids that are Wiccans in the 90s that are all out in the same valley, but doing like a Wiccan like spirit ritual to Mother Nature sort of thing, and they just happen to stumble upon each other, and they both got spooked by one another. It's like, oh shit, we need to get home. So while these troublemaking teens that broke curfew to go camping, book it back home because they're scared about this weird candle thing that's going on. The candle cult, which are just like a bunch of kids who are like goth kids in this town that are into Wicca and like other like kind of new age stuff in the 90s. They're freaked out by like being caught by these other people. And they're just like, the reason why they're all scattering at the end is like they're running to get home as well because they think they've been caught. So It was all one big misunderstanding.
Yep. Yeah, and it also explains the candles that are later there in winter, because they still meet up on Fridays.
Yeah. So they were all like walking from the other side of the valley to the site that just happened to be where the teens were camping out.
They also thought it was an awesome place to do it because of the view.
Yeah, it's a good view, get a good shot of like nature, and like again, be one with the earth and stuff. Like, yeah, all that new age crap. Oh god! Again, 90s, like 90s isms and such. So, but yeah, I hate it, but it's also kind of funny to me. So I can't be too mad, Mikey.
And that's the end of my actual thoughts.
All right. So, Gamer, you're up.
Where would my notes be? There. I think this is probably pretty early on. We thought nothing of it as a hike, as we hike all the time in the woods, although to be fair, we had never ventured much outside the town, let alone check out the trails stemming from the major highway, but being 14 and sheltered, we were desperate to be daring. That's one step away from daring to be stupid. Like the Weird Al song.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Because you can dare to be stupid. Dare to be stupid.
As soon as I thought that, I had to watch the music video because it would have been in my head.
It's funny that you went to that one because I went to Doko for some reason, because though they were the trails that they were used to kind of invoked to me like stick to the rivers and the lakes that you're used to. From like the "Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls" or "Don't Go Making Phony Calls" from Weird Al. Like, have you ever heard that song? Like the "Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls" song. And then there was the Weird Al song, which is "Don't Go Making Phony Calls." And yeah, like for some reason, like that, like it was for a split second that tune kicked into my head when I read that line. Whereas like the what was it, like the trails that we're used to, or hang on, where the hell is that in the story?
Thought nothing of it as we hike all the time in the woods, though to be fair, we never much ventured outside of our little town.
So let alone check out trails stemming from the major. Why the hell did that?
Hey, if you also thought of Weird Al, that's cool that we both thought Weird Al.
Yeah, I definitely. Well, I thought of Weird Al for a completely different reason, and like apparently like fabricated a shotgun in the process. But yeah, yours one's a lot more accurate. Because they're dare to be stupid.
It's doubly awesome because they have sweet outfits on during that, not because they're yellow.
Yep.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm.
As I was finishing up, a real small speck of shiny glint popped up far in the distance in the valley. I had to take a shot in the dark. I'd say it was a good half kilometer from us. It was unmistakably a flame. Not like a huge fire, but a small contained one, like a candle, but large enough to be seen far away. So maybe some lamp. So when I read that, if I was in that guy's shoes, why wouldn't you default to thinking it was another campfire?
Yeah.
Because at that point, he didn't say he was moving. He just said that there was a fire there. There was a light.
Mm-hmm.
But then we get that it was bobbing and up and down.
Like two sentences later, he says it moves. So he should be leading with the fact that there is a moving small speck of fire in the distance.
Yeah.
Because that would make more sense. To lead with, like, again, this is one of those situations where something's being described to me and then I have to go back over it with an eraser and make changes to it.
And you absolutely hate it.
It's my least favorite thing to do.
That's honestly, I think that is like 100% your axe to grind on when it comes to creepypastas.
Yes, indeed. But moving on. Hang on. Right. Okay. So after he stares at it for 5 minutes with his penis out, he zips up and goes back to the rest of them. Right. He says, "So I zip up, climb the hill, leaving the lone candle holding stranger be." So at this point of the story, like, I know what the title of the story is, but this character is really stuck on calling it a candle. Like, you wouldn't even...
It's the story because it's the title of the story.
I know that, but
I know, yeah.
Just said, like, it's probably a lamp, and then he goes back on it saying it's a candle. I know that this is him after the fact, and he saw a bunch of candles at the end when he went back there the second time, but he's like really hanging on the candle thing, even though he just called it a lamp, which was weird.
Yeah, like I feel like I'm kind of with you on this. I feel like the lamp, like him mentioning the lamp is, and then going back to the candle description, I feel like the lamp kind of detracts from like the light. Like I think the lamp should have been like not mentioned, like because it kind of a lamp is an upgrade from a candle. And then when you go back, you downgrade back to a candle, it's sort of like, it may not be like overtly or like dramatically like wrong or something to have that, but it's sort of like, it still fuckles with my brain a little bit. I'm like, you brought up lamp, why aren't you referring to it as a lamp? Because that's a lot, that seems to be the more adequate description of how bright the light is.
Yes. And yes, he's drunk and high, but we can only use that excuse so many times.
Yes. Is that lyrics from something, or did you just
Oh, that's just me.
say that weird? Okay. It sounded like you said that in a way that was like, is that supposed to be like lyrics?
It did kind of sound lyrical, but no. Maybe I'm just a genius. Anyways, moving on. Four flames bobbing up and down slowly from the bottom of the ravine, up the steep side of the hill we were on. We sat there for 10 more minutes. They'd be breathing right down our neck. So as soon as I read that, I'm like, what about the two flames that were only like 200 meters away? Did they also retreat back? Or are those two waiting there for the rest to regroup? It seems like at this point, it's focusing on all the extras that show up, and it completely ignores the fact that two of them are way closer.
Yeah.
Because they should have been on them in minutes, unless they were actually waiting.
I mean, they might have been waiting.
Perhaps. And then next note is regarding the sounds that they make. We've read that a few times. I don't need to read it again. At this point in the story, like I know we said critically silly reasons for what the sounds were. What did you think they were? Because I took it pretty literally.
Sorry.
Like they were some kind of anthropomorphic coyote people that were smart enough and civilized enough to make candles and work together like this.
Yeah.
But they're also all carnivores and hunters, hence why they're out looking for food, aka these kids.
Yeah. Legitimately, I thought cultists, because like they're just chanting under their breath. Like, and like the wheezing sound, like the high pitched wheezing sound is really just them like wheezing as they're running while chanting under their breath. Or my second go-to is ghouls. So ghoul cultists.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that legitimately, like that is like they're some kind of inhuman like coyote ghoul creature or something like that.
How about you, Mikey? Like critically silly stuff aside, like what do you actually think they were?
Yeah, I thought they were cultists, and I mean, they really only began showing up after the guy took a piss. So he probably pissed on some shrine, not knowing it in the dark.
Yeah.
And aggroed their like the god that they're worshiping. And he's like, "Oh, someone pissed on my grave. Go kill him now."
Yeah.
Yep.
Also, actually, just to kind of add to this, and add something that the Mikey just brought up. So, like, maybe they're not actually like living cultists. Maybe they are like revenants, like basically like spirit, like either spirits of the damned of like a cult that was down there like from years ago that died or sacrificed themselves down there, and now they like because he pissed on some like shrine that was like covered up by either by foliage or the dark. He basically tampered or he tampered or spoiled the shrine and woke up all these angry spirits.
Didn't we read a creepypasta or see a movie recently where that exact thing happened?
I mean, it is a very common trope in horror movies. Like, but I'm trying to think of a movie that we've seen that did that.
It was a kid. He was in the forest. He was out playing by himself, away from his parents, because his parents were there at the river. And he goes to like some big rock and stands on it. I think he cuts himself on it or something because he tripped.
Yeah, that was the Smiling Woman.
Yeah.
Story from from really early, from like from the very beginning of the year. We did. Yeah.
Very much those vibes.
Yeah, that kind of vibe where it's just like, yeah, you accidentally like disturb some. And again, like that's a very common trope. Like I'm looking at my DVD collection right now, looking at like at least 2 or 3 movies in that collection that does that exact same thing as like the plot device for how the movie gets started. Like where like the teens go out camping, one of them goes out to go take a leak, accidentally either pisses on something or just steps over something or like breaks something or tampers with something that they shouldn't have because they thought, oh, what's this? Let me take this. This is a cool rock. I'm going to take this rock off this shrine.
Mhm.
And then booga booga booga, revenant monster, slasher villain, or evil cult ghosts or Cthulhu show up and kill them all.
Yes.
One by one. But yeah, like it's a well used trope.
For sure. Then I'll move on.
Mhm.
This is towards the end. When I got there, I decided I wouldn't tell anyone in regards to the winter thing. I wouldn't tell them I found that old trail. I wouldn't tell them I walked back up the hill in broad daylight. And God forbid, my priest in my church confession booth will ever hear this. But I'm sure as hell gonna tell the entire internet.
Oh yeah. Also, when you were telling that, another bit of lyrics came to mind. It's like I will not tell them about this trail. I would not walk 5,000 miles. I would not walk 5,000 more.
It almost sounds Dr. Seussian, honestly.
A little bit too. Yeah, that was also like that just came up too. Yeah, it's just like it's like I will not tell them Sam I am. I will not eat green eggs and ham.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, we got the Nair's name now. His name's Sam. Because Sam I am.
Ah, yes.
And then in regards to the ending, like, that's all cool and everything, but I kind of wish that there was a candle holder that like followed each of them home or something like that.
That would be really cool.
It'd be pretty neat.
Like, or like, maybe when they got home, like the next morning, like they all like had or like after he either when they got back from their house in October or when he gets back from this trip in January, he looks out his door the next day after he went out to check that place, and there's a candle on his windowsill, like on the outside of his windowsill. Like shit, he's been found.
Yep.
Like because he went out and looked for it, he found all these these stacks. Just kind of add a little bit more to it. Like not only was it waiting for you, but it was still there and it found you.
Yep. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Or when they first get home, everything seems normal, but when they wake up in the morning and like they go to have breakfast or whatever, all the four that went out, they all notice that there's a candle somewhere in the house that they didn't really notice before because they weren't looking for it. Yeah. And they ask, like, why is that candle out? And all their parents say, oh, there was a power outage last night. And like they had to use it.
Again, and denoting that like maybe like that's why there was a like either that's something like an excuse for the parents because they were actually the cultists.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. I like
or
that.
The power actually went out. Or they to make it.
It's sort of like a false flag.
They purposefully cut the power to their own house. They would have that excuse.
Yep. Or it's just sort of like a fake out sort of thing. It's like, oh no, the power was out. It's like, oh okay, but then the characters are always left wondering. It's like, was it always a power out? Like, was it mundane or was it spooky? And I can never use candles again after these events.
Never again.
Like, I see that should have been the intro. It's like I don't use candles anymore. I've never been able to use candles again since the incident. We cut to Shelburne, Ontario.
Yeah, there needs to be something up there.
Yeah, no, legit.
Then, in regards to them all, like the monsters in the forest all camping at that one spot, I don't understand that really, because like, did they assume that they would come back like immediately after scaring?
They're really patient. Yeah. I don't know. Like it again. Like it tickles my brain because it gets me like with that like out of context. Why the fuck are they there? But then when you like if you think about it, it's like you can definitely come up with some dumb like reason. Like why did they do this? Like it's just like, man, those are some really patient cultists. It's like they'll come back. They always come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it's like the Shinning episode from Simpsons where like they're just out in the maze and they can't find their way home. So like Marge and Homer and all them find he has like a portable TV or something like that, and they all just sit around like next to each other and like watch this like portable TV, and then they all freeze to death.
Nice. Yeah, the only other way I could think of the people to go back, the kids, is like because they think they saw it, but they were drunk and high at the time. So maybe they're hoping that they'll come back not drunk and high because they'll want to prove to themselves what they saw was real, and then they'd get them maybe.
Yeah.
And if like maybe these monsters can't actually leave the forest, and that's why they didn't follow them home, and why they're just waiting for them in the forest.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's questions.
Yeah, we never get a we're not going to get a sequel.
Probably not.
Unless when did this come out? When did this get? I can actually quickly look that up. Hang on, let's check the history of this on the site. 2014 was when this got posted. So
sequel's right around the corner.
Yep, any day now.
It'll be 2024 soon. Maybe that'll be the 10th year anniversary.
Oh my god, you're right.
Yeah, that's the end of my notes.
Okay. Then I suppose we'll move on to final thoughts. So, for me, this story has a good core hook, or like like premise of something spooky and weird happening in the woods, and a bunch of teens like coming upon it and stuff like that. But the way it's written is a bit annoying to me, and in need of a fair bit of editing. Also, it feels like the author isn't actually from the area or province. And I mean, if they are, I'm sorry. There was just a lot of incongruities and like odd descriptions of the regions. For me, like to kind of like get over like to try and like leap over and try and enjoy the story, because I kept like, that's that in Shelburne, really in Sudbury. That's okay. No. I've been to those places. So like there's a bit of I guess I was trying to get up a hill for this story from like the geography point of view, and like because of the set, like the way the setting is described, that it kind of ruined a bulk of the story for me. I will partially recommend it more for the weirdness value of what is in that valley and like what's behind the candles and stuff. Because it also, for me, it makes excellent fodder for a game scenario. Like I want to kind of run this as a Cthulhu game where the players are a bunch of teens that happen upon a Cthulhu cult now, out in like rural central Ontario. But otherwise, the story could use a bit more work before I would recommend it fully. So that's my recommendation. Mikey, the E stands for evil.
All right. Well, the fact that I spent most of my time trying to figure out Nair's schooling situation.
Super important.
Yeah, I think we both did like really deep dives into like the background and setting of this story.
Yeah, like that really put a damper on the story for me, because I was pulling it apart from like the first paragraph because of the mention of Canadian Texas.
Yeah.
And then when it got to the creepy part, it's just basically floating flames in the woods. And then it's revealed at the end that there's a stack of candles.
Yeah.
So basically, the easiest explanation is the candle cult, and the zinger at the end doesn't really work for me.
Okay, that's fair.
So
also, I just need to stop you for a second. You keep bringing up Candle Cult, and I just keep thinking, "Welcome to Candle Cult." It's like the club, or like it's like the kids club for like the fan club for Candle Cove.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
They meet on Fridays.
Yeah. And then there's actually like to go back to my Simpsons reference. There's a portable TV that they have at their ritual site that they just like watch static for 30 minutes while holding candles, and then talk about like the cool episode they watched of the little girl screaming and the puppet screaming and then blood just dripping down the screen, and Pirate Percy and like the the ship's face just saying, "You have to go inside, don't you know?" Like, yeah. It's just a Candle. It's a Candle Cove fan club. It's a Candle cult. This is part of the Candle Cove expanded universe. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
Anyway, with that said, I'm not recommending this.
Okay. And Gamer.
I kind of liked it, honestly. I'm not joking.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
Because like, while you two had the deepest of deep dives, and like you went right into the deep end and stayed down there for a very long time, it was concerning.
In fact,
while I was in the,
I drowned.
yeah, it was very concerning for me while I was just like doggy paddling through the shallow end with my water wings on. I was wondering if you guys were going to ever come up, because I was just coasting along the surface of the water, just listening to the story and just enjoying it and getting as immersed as I can into it. It left me with questions, but not in a way that I was mad at, honestly. It just left me wanting there to be a sequel where, like, he took photos of all the candles and he went back to his friends and is like, we have to go back there and see what the fuck's going on here. And then you can actually get some answers on what the heck's going on here. Like, there was a few mess ups with the grammar and all that, sure. And there always is, because it's a creepypasta. But
it's amateur writing.
Yeah, that too. It's amateur writing from the actual writer and from the character himself as well, who's just a guy. You know, so I didn't really have as much of a problem with the wording, and as informal as the wording was, even with stuff like, you know, it didn't bug me because it's just a guy putting down his information, you know. He wasn't trying to do it in a structured, like a novel or anything like that, you know. He's just putting it out on the internet, so it didn't bug me. But overall, I'll recommend it. I kind of want to see where it goes, if it does go anywhere. Although since it's been damn near a decade, it's probably not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, unless what's their name? Unless Indole decides to write or post another a sequel to The Candles of Shelburne.
Feel indulged.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, I mean, again, I liked part of it, but like I just couldn't get past some of the certain things. But I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, because like when I was starting to do my grammar, I'm like, okay, grammar. Okay, that's enough. I'm done. I'm gonna read the story. I want to enjoy this one for once.
How dare you?
So I'm like,
how fucking dare you?
They have enough grammar. They'll do it. It's fine.
You shit on me for liking things and letting things alone, like, and not like bothering with certain grammar things after a certain point. How fucking dare you?
What are you doing right now, sir?
I was following your example. I learned it from watching you.
Well, so did I. That's why I stopped with the grammar, because I learned that from watching you.
I love how we always have like a differing opinion on this.
I don't plan this shit either. It's not like
I know we 100% we do not
and told you like do a deep dive in grammar. I'm not going to do shit on grammar.
Yeah, like peek behind the curtain for our audience. We don't tell each other what our notes are. We don't share our notes at all. This is you're getting the live, or as close to live reaction as can be on a recording.
Just like I'm the yin to your yang, or vice versa. Who knows?
Yeah.
Very
well, yeah. Again, this is just the epitome of like we both have such different perspectives and opinions on things.
Yes. Although technically Mikey would be the opposite of me, because he said he wouldn't recommend it and I said I would, and you said partial.
Yeah. Like I'm willing to give part like the core idea of the story of like the weirdness in the woods.
Yes.
A chance, or like I can use as like I'm seeing as like I recommend it to steal from it for another
steal
creative
is a
venture.
bad word.
No, it's like drawing inspiration, stealing.
Yes.
Yeah, drawing inspiration. It's the same fucking thing, man. It's like I'm stealing the idea for my own thing. It might as well be the same thing.
One sounds more kosher than the other. That's all I'm saying.
I suppose. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, my recommendation is because the setting itself, it was described relatively well, even though I said like it didn't say that the flame was moving, but the whole vibe of it just worked for me.
Okay. So yeah, okay. So I guess at the end of the day, brass tacks, partial recommendation, not recommendation, and then a positive recommendation.
Yes.
So 1.5
Right down the middle.
out of 3.
Right down the middle.
Yeah, right down the middle. So, and again, like if honestly, I feel like having us 3, like if somebody is like listening to us and like they vibe with one of us or the other, like they kind of gauge whether or not they want to read the story or read a little bit more, like than after the fact sort of thing. Like they can get a vibe. Basically, like it's like if they vibe more like me, they might like find it interesting for like an idea for something, or like if they vibe like you, they might find the story a lot more enjoyable. And then if they vibe like Mikey, they like maybe I'll give this story a pass, like sort of thing. So, but
which is kind of funny because I think it takes longer to listen to our episode than read the story.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, and again, like we do at the start, we do kind of start the episode with like, you can check it out at creepypasta.wiki.com or wherever these stories are coming from.
Yes,
but yeah, like, so maybe we should change our format around sometime and just like we recommend it and then like we go into like here's why, like spoiler reason, like spoiler stuff. That might, I don't know. We'll maybe think about that. Or, maybe force people to like listen through the whole thing and then get to the end where they have to finally get the recommendation from us.
It would be really weird if we flipped it around though, because at the start of this episode, Mikey'd be like, I don't recommend it. You'd be like, I partially recommend it. And I'd be like, I recommend it. And you'd be like, why? We'd have to talk about it.
Well, and then they listen to it. Well, yeah. And then we go into it. Like I've actually, like I've watched Blood Splattered Vlog by the Horror Guru and Count Jacula on YouTube, and they do this exact same kind of thing where they do a spoiler-free bit or at the beginning where it's like, yeah, you should go check this out or don't go check this out, like, and then, all right, now that we've said like a few spoiler-free things about like why we didn't like it or why we liked it and stuff like that, now we're going to go into our spoiler segment for the next like hour. And like either like bitch about the product or bitch about the video or the movie or show or story, or praise a bunch of stuff we love about it.
Yeah. It's kind of more interactive with the audience as well, because it's like, here's what we think, and then based on our thoughts, like if someone vibes well with Mikey, then they'll know going in they're probably not going to like it. But if they want to sit down and read it, then cool, and then they continue the podcast and they can hear how their thoughts with the story mesh with what we're saying as it's going through.
Yeah. But then I'd also have to go in and like basically do like an even shorter like synopsis of the story, like kind of like it's a story about like some teens getting stuck in the wood or seeing something weird in the woods.
You have to shorten it.
Recommendations. Actually, I guess we could just do that, like basically a spoiler-free synopsis. So like we're like basically just sort of like the pitch for the story.
This is a pitch meeting.
Well, no, I mean like what's the story like in 2 or 3 words, or in 2 or 3 sentences, and then we recommend it, and then we all right, now for spoilers, here's the rundown, and then here's our grammar inquisition, here's our final thoughts. Or our
you might not even need the mini rundown. Just start it with like, what'd you guys think? And Mike's like, I didn't really recommend it, I didn't like it. And then Gamer, what do you think? I recommend it. Okay, cool, well, I kind of recommend it, so let's find out why. Or for those that want to read it.
So you basically do away with, yeah.
No, like you do the recommendations, and then you go, for those that want to read along the story is at creepypasta. Whatever the fuck. And here's the rundown after you guys are done reading.
Okay.
It really doesn't, it's not adding more words, it's just moving the words around, because the ending is now the intro.
Legit. It took 8 years, but we might be changing our format.
But sometimes when we go through the recording, this is the longest outro ever. Sometimes when we go through the recording, though, and hear each other's thoughts, we do change each other's mind. So we may need mini final thoughts as well to see if our thoughts change dependent on what each other said as well.
Yeah, because like sometimes it changes because like, oh, you put up some good points that I actually kind of agree with, but like it conflicts with my opinion. So I guess I've changed my opinion. Like, and it's not like we're intentionally going out of our way to like, no, I am right, you are wrong, this is why, like kind of thing.
That's
like we. Okay, well, I'm less evil. I'm less cruel. But yeah, it's. I like how we're like we didn't have an 8-year birthday episode last week, but by God, we're making up for it on our pre-Canada Day episode. Yep. With this long diatribe about like changing the format or like augmenting the format of our show. I'm keeping all of this in, by the way.
Fine. Yeah, I wonder if we'd be better or worse that way.
Do you want to give it a shot next week?
We can try it.
Yeah, we can give it a shot.
We'll put the question out into the...
I'll even maybe put up a poll on Twitter before this episode gets out and just like say, hey, would you want us to do our recommendations at the beginning of the episode and then go thing? Or like, just to see if like, I mean, any of the listeners that we have on Twitter, like see what their opinions on that are. And yeah, and then like, yeah, maybe we'll do a couple of episodes doing that format. And then like, if we get any like feedback, like via emails or Twitter or any of our comments sections, of if people like this or don't like this format, then we can either just go back to the old way or we can stick with this new way. This might actually be a really good turning point. So we'll give it a shot next week, or and like a couple of weeks after, like after that, because we do have a bit of a buffer room between when episodes get recorded and posted. Yeah. So we'll do a couple of episodes of like in the new format to see how it plays out, see how we vibe with it. And if you out there are listening and would like to comment, you can do so on Podbean, Facebook, YouTube, or Tumblr. You can also send us an email, send us a message on Twitter about it. Mikey is at the East End Evil. The Gamer in Yellow is at the Gamer in Yellow without that W because his name is very long.
Yeah.
And I'm at Review Cultist. I'm you can send any of us the message, but I'm basically the representative of the podcast on Twitter.
Yeah, because most of the time when I check Twitter is when we do this outro and you remind me that I have a Twitter.
Yes. So every week you forget it and then remember again.
Yes.
Nice. And if you'd like to send us an email, you can go to aldenterigamortis@gmail.com. That's ALDENTERIGAMORTIS@gmail.com, where you can also leave us suggestions for other creepypastas, SCPs. You creep it, we'll peep it. Yeah. And you can also send us a message there, like saying like how well we're doing, or like if you don't like what we're doing, or if you would like to, if you'd like the change that we're gonna try and implement, or like should we keep the formula the way it is. Reach out to us, talk to us. We won't bite. And if you'd like to support us financially, you can go to Patreon, look up Al Dente Rigor Mortis, and select the backer tier you'd like to support us at. We have $2 and $5 tier with special episodes, early access, extra content. To our patrons that are helping support the show, thank you guys immensely. You're helping keep those hosting bills at bay. And as always, we very much appreciate that. And to our listeners and the authors of these stories, thank you immensely, because without your listenership, well, it'd be like screaming into the void, and we wouldn't be getting emails and replies and the odd comment, and it would just feel very lonely out in that dark, on that dark country road as we're trying to escape the escarpment. And without your authorship and posting your stories online for people to enjoy and read, we really wouldn't have much of a show because we'd have nothing to talk about. So thank you. Until next time, I have been your host, Review Cultist.
I'm Mikey, D stands for evil.
And I'm the Gamer in Yellow.
And this has been Al Dente Rigor Mortis. Happy Canada Day. Sleep well.